Hey everybody, Roger Porcelli here, and welcome back to my channel for another episode of RPMs Quick Tips. We'll go over how to use the RPM Spring Jig to cut and trim the RPMs brush springs, talk about what lock washers are and how to install and use those, and we'll also discuss the different placements of spring posts and what that can do for the performance of your car. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's jump into it. Okay everybody, this is the RPMs Spring Jig. It is used to trim and tweak the motor brush springs for hood cars. I'm going to go through really quick how I trim them and the extra little bend that I put in them for my cars. Okay, so I've already loaded the spring. It's right here, you can see it. I just did that to save time. The first thing I like to do is just put my thumb over top of the spring so it doesn't pop out when I trim it. And then I like to get a nice pair of flush cutters so I can get a nice close cut, and you're going to cut it right at the edge of the tool. So get it right up there and snap it off. You want to make sure you have a good set of cutters so that it gets it nice and flush so that it's the actual length that you want. The next thing that I do, and this is optional, not everybody does it, is to add some tension to the spring by putting a little bend in it. If you notice, there's a notch right here for you to put an X-Acto into and then push against the spring. You want to make sure you use the back of the X-Acto, not the sharp side, so you don't accidentally cut the spring. So basically, all you have to do this is to put the X-Acto in that little notch. I'm trying to get it so that you can see here, and then push towards the post. And then you can see it, you can actually see it right here. It put a nice little kink right there in the spring to add some tension. Now that the spring is out, we can inspect it to make sure that we got enough of a bend. Like for me, that's exactly how I like it. There's a little bit of an extra kink there to add tension. And the next thing we're going to do is grab one of the spring posts. If you're using mine, there's a little bit of a trick to getting them on because they're a little tight, and that's so that they don't fall off in a crash or anything like that. So the trick that I do, as you can see, is I'm opening the spring up by squeezing the two legs, and I grab a tweezers, and then I just massage the spring over the post, and it goes on relatively easy. And then we have our completed spring and post. So once the spring is on the post, there's actually one tweak left for me to do to the spring itself. So you'll notice you have one leg that's long, one leg that's short. Right now, the short leg is the leg that's going against the brush in the hood. So I like to take the needle nose pliers here and put a little bend in the short leg. And you just have to make sure that you grab with just the tip.
Perhaps play a little game called Just the Tip, just for a second, just to see how it feels.
And give it a little bit of a bend over.
Bend over.
Ben, nice to meet you, Victor Hugo.
And I'll show you what this looks like in a second. And you can see that there's another kink right here, which is going to go in the groove on the brush to hold it in place better. Sometimes in a hard wreck in a hood car, the brush will push back past the spring, no matter what spring you're using or which post you're using, unless you put that little bend in there to hold it nice and tight. So we're going to step away from the springs for a minute here and talk about the hood shims. And what these are designed to do is to keep the actual hoods from rocking back and forth in the bulkhead. So this is the movement I'm talking about. It goes forward and back probably about 20 thousandths or so. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, when you buy the hoods from Wizard, there's either a spacer behind here if it's the original hood system, or in the front if it's the 2022 hood system. And if you're going to use these shims, you need to take the spacer out no matter where it is to install these, to make sure that the brush doesn't bind up. So the way I install these is I'll take my needle nose pliers, well, they're not really needle nose, they're a flat nose, and I'll grab the shim as such, and I'll grab the bulkhead, and then I will proceed to wedge it underneath the hood, starting at the rear. You can see it's already started there, and then rotate it in, and then push it all the way in. Now that's installed, and if you try to move that hood, it can't go anywhere. It's locked in place because of the lock washer. Now this gives you the added benefit of the car not changing due to the hood moving back and forth and moving the brush with it, changing the speed of the car up or down. So you gain more consistency and reliability. Let me know in the comments down below if you use the lock washers and what you think of them. Alright, so the next step in installing the spring and spring holder is to actually put it on the spring post on the bulkhead. So this one is set up for the passenger side. We're going to throw the brush in there first. This is an RPMs Hypervolt 20-degree silver brush. Put it in the bulkhead. Goes in there. We'll grab the spring and spring holder. Put it over the post. Press it down. Grab the long leg. While we're doing that, we want to make sure that the spring goes in the groove as such. Right there. You can see that. And then we're going to take the long leg and put it around the secondary post right there, which is there to hold this leg of the spring. Now what I normally do here is grab a pair of pliers and grab this spring and pull it a little bit tight. This adds a little bit more tension, and then wrap it around that post a little bit. And then I'll take the flush cutters and cut it even with the outside edge of the bulkhead, just like that. Now that is done. Make sure you can see everything that I just did. And then the only thing left to do is to do the driver's side on this motor. But we're not going to do that in this video. I'm just going to show you a completed one right here. As mentioned earlier, I wanted to go over all the different options you have for installing the spring posts and the springs. So let's do that now. See here, there are currently 3 different kind of posts. The standard wizard post, the offset RPMs post, which allows you to use a 3-coil spring or a wizard spring and flip it thick side down or thick side up to change the angle of attack of the spring against the brush, which then changes the pressure of the brush on the commutator. And then the double-sided RPMs single coil spring holder. This one will allow you to either use 2 single coil springs or 1 single coil spring, high or low. All of these choices are great options. My starting choice is the RPMs 3-coil spring and the offset spring holder, and usually with the thin side down, thick side up on both sides of the car. And then I will go from there. If the car doesn't seem to spin up on the dyno, I'll put some pressure on the springs here to see if that changes the pitch of the car on the dyno, and then adjust accordingly. So one of the first things I'll do is flip this post to see if the change of the pressure on the brush gives me a better RPM total. The point to going over all that is to show that you have options, all of which, as stated, are very good. Just experiment, see what works for that car. Every car is going to be different. I have cars that have all of those setups in them. Okay, that's all I got for you today. If you like this video, make sure you let me know in the comments down below, and also hit that like and subscribe button, as it really helps support this channel and lets me make more videos in the future. Until next time, keep it in the slot.